Welcome to Sam's Business Growth Show. I'm Sam Dunning, a digital marketing, sales and business growth evangelist. Tune in and subscribe today as I'll be interviewing business leaders, experts and entrepreneurs from around the globe. You'll be learning their story, how digital marketing has helped them along the way, and exclusive tips and insights to help you skyrocket your own business. Welcome everyone to the first ever LinkedIn Live from yours truly, Sam Dunning. And thought I'd do something a bit spicy for the first ever episode. I thought I'd record a live version of my podcast, Sam's Business Growth Show. So I'm joined today by Christian Burton, and he's the CEO and founder at Pipeline Upgrade. How's it going, Christian?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good, Sam. I'm honoured to be your guinea pig today for this live broadcast. So thank you.
It could go anywhere. Hopefully it'll be nice and smooth. At the moment, it seems to be running okay. So we'll jump into it. And I've got a quick intro for Christian. So anyone that doesn't know Christian, he was born in Spain in Marbella. He's the CEO and founder over at Pipeline Upgrade, which is the UK's fastest growing appointment setting agency. They use a unique pay-per-meeting risk-free commercial model and are trusted by many major tech companies to keep their sales rolling. He's got sales hubs in the UK, Spain, and they're expanding into the US and Middle East next year. So, as always on the show, there's a few things that we'd like to cover with Christian. We want to learn a bit about his story, so a bit about his background in terms of, well, we know where he grew up, but his first taste of business and sales. And then a few companies he's worked at, and some actionable tips that he can share with us in terms of sales, in terms of business, or in terms of marketing, up to founding his own company. And then we'll chat a bit about how he's grown that, how he acquires Pipeline, and how he helps businesses, so we can share these valuable tips for everyone tuning in today. So Christian, if you could take away, my friend, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. So how I got into sales, well, it kind of started with my education, to be honest, which is quite odd because you don't get taught sales at school or university. But I actually studied architecture and design, and it took me 4 years of my degree at university for my headmaster, or the head teacher at the time, to say, Christian, I've got something to tell you, I'm afraid. And this was during my last major project. And he said, you can't draw to say your rubbish drawings better than the people that can draw. So he said, I suggest you get into some communication-based sort of job.
Okay.
So that was kind of my safety net, was to be an architect, because my mother owned a big company in the south of Spain that did interior design and architecture, but that all fell through once I realised I couldn't draw. And then I actually started in London doing probably one of the hardest types of sales, which is becoming extinct, sadly, at the moment, which is door knocking. I actually got given a patch, which coming from Marbella to Hackney and Brixton, which was my area to cover, was a big wake-up call. It wasn't quite the same. And I was going door to door, trying to sell, believe it or not, makeup, which was just wonderful, as you can imagine.
That's definitely a bit of a change from wanting to be an architect to door-to-door sales and makeup. And I bet that was pretty hard work, wasn't it? A bit of a shock to the system.
It was. I mean, to be honest, my father is kind of one of these guys that really wants you to start from the bottom, and it's hard graft. And a lot of people assume when you say Marbella, you get a silver spoon. And don't get me wrong, I had a great upbringing, but it was never going to be an easy journey for me. He wanted me to learn everything from the ground up, and maybe not necessarily selling makeup in Brixton, but that's where I ended up. And it was a commission-only role. And I wouldn't have changed it for the world, looking back at it, because it gave me the best foundation possible. If you could do that, you can do anything, walking around London with a big suitcase in the rain, wearing a suit. And after that, I managed to get a job with a great big tech company, which was fantastic, had a great culture, a company called Kyocera, which sold photocopiers and printers and that sort of software, document management that goes with it. And it was quite interesting because I felt, going from door knocking in the rain to having a nice, cozy office to sit in with a phone, where the biggest type of rejection could be maybe someone hanging up on you. I thought, I've died and gone to heaven. Whereas a lot of people actually find, cold calling a very challenging and embarrassing task. I thought, you really need to try door knocking before you judge this. So that's how I sort of started getting into what I call
Yeah, awesome, man.
a real
And
career.
I bet there was quite some lessons that you learnt from both those experiences, really, in terms of, like you say, being thrown at and in at the deep end, door knocking. Was there any takeaways that you could share with us in terms of sales skills, in terms of being able to deal with tricky situations and thinking on your feet and stuff like that?
Oof. I think the biggest thing is to be authentic. People can see through like BS quite quickly. Excuse my French.
Sure.
You know, and when you're looking in the whites of someone's eyes, it's very obvious to them when you're trying to pull this, you know, the wool over their eyes, so to speak. Excuse the pun. So I would say always be authentic, and even if you feel that you're potentially not getting your pitch out correctly, don't worry about that. Just be open and honest with the customer at that point and say, look, I've totally conked this up, sort of thing. I'd love to just start again, or will you give me the time to explain a bit better? And you know, most people out there have got a son or a daughter who's going to get their first ever job at some point and is going to probably go through something similar to what you're going through if they start in sales. So I think most people are empathetic with your situation, but we're always fearful of being judged, you know. So that fear has to be sort of removed because it's not going to help you in any way.
Got it. Okay. So that authenticity, being honest, being upfront with people. That makes sense, man. And then you moved on to photocopiers and printers, which was B2B rather than B2C, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, photocopiers, that industry is a really interesting industry because, let's be honest, photocopiers, they're not the sexiest product in the world to sell. They're not, you know, it's not like trying to sell iPhones when they first came out. And I joined that industry at sort of the tail end of the golden years, let's call it. So when it came to trying to sell photocopiers, and I used to run their telesales team for a long time, that's when you really get tested on how good you are at selling, because you haven't got a product that's just going to sell itself. You know, it's a very commoditized industry. So that's when you know, you separate the good from the bad, so to speak. And then, yeah, did that for 8 years. Had a great time, great journey. And then obviously my parents always resided out here in Spain. I'm the only son, they're 80 plus years old, and they had health issues. And I had to make a choice 3.5 years ago now to move back out here to look after them, you know, which was just a really difficult decision. It seems to a lot of people like such an obvious choice. Why wouldn't you move back to the sun? But, you know, I'd built a life in the UK for 12 years and it was my sort of new home. So it wasn't an easy choice, but decided to do something that I knew I could do well, which is what I was doing at that company for a long time, which was running telesales teams and lead generation. Those leads were drip fed at the time to channel partners, to resellers. So I had a good network of resellers, a black book of contactors, as we will call it in sales. And I knew what I could do well. So Pipeline Upgrade was born.
Nice. Awesome, man. And just before we move into Pipeline Upgrade and how you've grown that over the last couple of years or so, are there any tips you could share with us? So B2B sales, quite a transition from knocking on doors and asking general consumers to buy your goods. And like you say, it was quite a nice change because it meant you could phone people rather than having to be in their face and having to deal straight up with rejection. You could just hang up, move on to the next one, or get a nice little rejection email. There must have been a few tips you picked up in terms of sales, in terms of business, that sort of things, whilst you're doing that, as you're doing it for 8 years. And like you say, photocopiers and printers isn't the easiest game because there's so much competition, isn't there, in that kind of industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to sort of repeat myself, but the authentic part is key. I think the big difference between sort of door knocking, if you will, to calling B2B as an example, is that when you're about to prospect for business to business, you've got the opportunity of time. You've got the opportunity of researching that company. Whereas if I was going into a barber shop in Brixton, I don't know what my customer's going to be like. I don't know what their pains are. I don't know how to resolve those pains. You know, I remember I was approaching, when I was doing the door knocking, Valentine's Day. So I kind of could make some educated guesses that maybe makeup would be quite a nice gift for their, you know, for their other half of the loved ones, you know, at that time. But joking aside, when it comes to business, you've got the opportunity to research the company a bit more before you actually sort of make that call or that email. So that clearly, you know, research is key. The The other thing is, having a positive mindset, as it sounds so obvious, a lot of people get burnt out very quickly in sales, especially in that sort of entry role. And I think it's because a lot of people watch a lot of TV these days. They watch The Apprentice, they watch all these things, and they think they're going to be the next Alan Sugar overnight. And, it takes a while to build a career and to get good at something, especially at sales. And you've got to sort of swallow your pride. So I would say that's a really important thing as well, not to be too proud to get your hands dirty, really.
Yeah, no, that's great points. Research, like you say, and positivity, and just like in sales and business in general, we're dealing with rejection almost every single day. Have you got any tips on how to overcome that? I don't think there's a simple answer, really, Christian. We've all got our own ways of dealing it. With me, I usually kind of start hitting things for a little while, start banging my desk. My fiance downstairs says, "Sam, shut up," and then we'll 10 minutes later, I might be calmed down a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of really big at pipeline upgrade mindfulness. So we've got mindfulness coaches which help us with this and help our agents with this sort of thing. But the first thing is kind of understanding that, a situation is quite often not a bad or a good situation. You've just sort of labeled it as one or the other because of what you've historically been taught to think. Whereas, as I put a video out quite recently, actually, somebody could be reaching over to pick up the phone to you and spilt a coffee on themselves. And as a result, pick up in an angry way, not be too sort of pleasant to you over the phone. And you've taken that personally and let it affect the rest of your day. And it could have nothing to do with you. So it's about kind of understanding that you shouldn't be labeling moments as good or bad. They're just moments in a day. And, that's one thing. But, as a tip, I guess music is a really powerful thing. Personally, that's where I go to if I don't go in the sun to get some vitamin D and try to cheer up for a bit. But no, ultimately, we are all going to face those negative calls at some time. And having a sort of a song that picks you up and plays on your emotions that you can link to maybe a great time in your life, I think it just triggers those positive memories and takes you to a different place for a moment. You're able to disconnect, really.
Definitely, music can be really powerful. Completely agree. And can help pick you up when you're feeling a bit down spirits, which happens a lot, like you say. All right, man. Well, let's learn a bit more about why you started Pipeline Upgrade, and if you could guide us through a bit more about the journey, how you started it. As in, was the journey an easy one? Did you have customers ready to rock and roll, or were you hard grafting on the telephone or on social? Tell us a bit more.
Okay, I guess why I started Pipeline Upgrade was obviously to get that financial and lifestyle freedom. And I think it's just important to say that because our motto here is don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. And I felt that what was available out there in terms of lead generation was always very focused on how many number of calls have you made, ultimately having people behind rows of desks for a long period of time. And the best salespeople that I knew out there weren't only incentivized by money, but they actually wanted more flexibility, and not a lot of companies out there could offer that. So I wanted to create something that kind of helped those sales professionals first and foremost, but also I wanted to give something clearly to clients that would attract them to be customers straight away, because guess what? I didn't have an income at that point and I needed something that was going to work. And as a result, a lot of traditional lead generation agencies, they charge, like I say, for call time. They'll charge you day rates, and typically they'll charge you for data for the campaign, and they'll charge you setup fees to design your script. But most of the time you'll get to the end of those campaigns and lo and behold, the predictions, which are based on previous experiences, never work out as planned. So a lot of people out there will say, oh, I outsourced and I got my fingers burnt. So I thought, right, how can we solve this problem? And the way that we did it is we came up with a cost per meeting model, where we basically negotiate with our clients a cost for every appointment that takes place. And if the client basically goes to the appointment and it doesn't work out as planned, i.e. it's not the right shape and size of company as we pre-agreed, we replace the meeting. And if we get to the end of the time frame and we haven't delivered, say, 10 out of the meetings they've purchased, we've only done 8, we actually refund them the 2 at the same rate they paid for them within 5 days. So there's no other costs. We supply the data, the pitch, everything. So it's a very commercially risk-free proposition. And to be quite frank with you, to a lot of these companies, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I give this a go? Worst case scenario, I get my money back. So I think that's why we've grown really, quite dramatically. And obviously by actually doing what we say we're going to do and managing to retain and renew our clients, because typically we don't sign big long-term contracts with clients. They buy 10 appointments and they give us a month to do them. So we've got to constantly prove ourselves every month to them to keep them. So
got it. Okay.
That's it really.
So a mix of having that flexibility for yourself and your team, it sounds like, and then offering your clients almost a kind of risk-free model has helped you quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And, growing the second part of your question, how has it been actually growing the pipeline upgrade? We've been on a journey, when we initially set up the business, or when I set up the business, the Royal we used to work with other telemarketing agencies. We would negotiate a deal with them behind the scenes and we would outsource to them. And we vetted who we felt were the best agencies out there in the UK. And, we quickly found out that a lot of our clients in the IT sector, they didn't really enjoy sort of the quality of what was being done. So we actually decided to bring it in-house. So it was a really big transition as a business, going from outsourcing the service to bringing it in-house. And it was the best thing we ever did. And as I say, now we headhunt freelance telemarketers that are very experienced. The average age of our agents is between 35 and 45 years old. So, they're very experienced in what they do. They're very credible on the phone. And that's really helped us to get to where we are and get the quality right for our clients, really.
Yeah, so we were saying that you've grown the company with partnerships. But yeah, what other channels are there any other channels that you could share with us, Christian, that have been useful for you in terms of actually gaining end clients for yourself as a company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so initially we started working, for example, with a lot of resellers, a lot of people that resell IT products. And what happened was, once we built a good reputation in that market, a lot of these resellers would go to the manufacturers that they, the people that make the products that they sell, the vendors, and they would ask them to effectively go in partnership with us on what they call an MDF fund, a marketing fund. So that's been a really attractive channel for us, which we're growing, and we're doing that with some massive, vendors in the UK at the moment. It's been very successful. The vendors win out of it because they get to see where their money's been spent with the MDF fund. And rather than say a reseller get £5,000 a month worth of funding, with us, that £5,000 could equate to £100,000, if not more, of opportunity. So it's a lot more valuable way of spending that money.
Okay, cool. Decent. And are there any, obviously you guys are built around telemarketing and appointment setting. So I'm guessing that plays a bit of part in terms of how you pick up business. But are there any digital channels, Kristen, that you as a company like to use to build up new clients?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. LinkedIn is clearly a massive part of where we win clients. We've dipped our toe in the water with SEO. We're probably a prime customer for you. We haven't actually gone too far with that. But LinkedIn, we don't do too much email marketing, if I'm honest. But most of our clients, if I'm completely honest, have come from word of mouth and referrals. And I did a video about that quite recently. I still believe, whether you want to use your phone, your email, whatever, ultimately they're just communication methods. Your most powerful tool is your referrals, it's your network. And if you're doing the right job, you shouldn't have to worry about growing because people will talk about you. And that's what I would always, advocate that people try to do more of, is ask people in their network who they might know that could be introduced to them. But that's my main tip.
Decent. Yeah, referrals always good. Have you got any tips for actually asking for those? I mean, a lot of guests that have come on have said things like do great work and then they'll come. Some people don't actually like to ask for them. Some people just say you should just do brilliant work and then they'll come themselves. Some say wait to finish a project or finish the product, make sure the client's happy, then ask if you know anyone that could benefit from this. Is there any kind of methodology you've got in terms of asking for them?
Yeah, I mean, we're quite bold in how we do things. And for example, when we launch a client, a lot of people are surprised that we post out on LinkedIn that we've launched a new campaign with X client. And that's because they're fearful of that you're going to lose that client if you put out there, your competition is going to come and try to steal your client away. Whereas we ask our clients pretty much on day one that we want to build a case study with them, so we put a flag in the sand. And at the same time, we say to them, if we do a good job for you, would you be happy to introduce us to people where there's no conflict of interest, clearly? And so it kind of makes us committed from day one to ensuring that it's going to go well, because we've got everything to lose. Not only the fact that if we don't book quality meetings, we don't make money because we're ultimately refunding the money, it's our reputation as well. So we really just want to sort of, put our skin in the deal and actually just make a mark from day one and publicize it across LinkedIn that we're going to make this happen.
I like that. I like what you just said there, building a case study with your clients and letting them know from the outset that you actually want to showcase the work you're doing with them. And I guess it gives them exposure as well as you at the same time. So it's kind of like a bit like a win-win. And I know you're doing quite a bit of video, aren't you, Christian, at the moment? I see your vids on LinkedIn with, like you say, the tips and referrals. So is that proving quite successful?
Yeah. You know what? I'll be honest, I hesitated because I didn't think it would be as successful as it has been. And, even today, I've been really sort of nervous getting on this. It's my first time of doing this live video call. But, we do get a lot of inquiries and a lot of praise for those videos. I wouldn't say they're kind of hot to trot opportunities. I would say that they're opportunities to engage with companies that we may know have perhaps never been on their radar before. So we've, a lot of people share the videos, and it's entered a lot of other networks that my normal organic reach wouldn't have reached on its own, sort of thing. So it's worked well from that perspective. And obviously a core part of what we do as well, besides the appointment setting, is prospect training. So we actually teach people how to prospect like we do if they've got their own internal teams, which a lot of companies have already invested in. So it's kind of a way of demonstrating and giving a flavor for the sort of things that we would actually teach their teams if we were to actually, become a sort of a supplier of theirs for training, sort of thing.
Awesome. Okay. No, that makes sense what you said about the video. I think what I found personally from LinkedIn is a lot of the time the content that I put out, so whether that's video-based content, whether it's text-based images or whatever, a lot of the time the inbound opportunities I get anyway are sometimes people I don't even know I'm connected to. And they might message you like, Sam, I've been following you for a while. I liked your video the other day on X and like the content you put out on Y. And you're thinking, wow, like these guys have actually been looking at my stuff for some time. And now they've seen this piece of content, so this video maybe on something that I talked about, a tip, that's then prompted them to reach out. So it's not like an instant thing. It's just building that trust over time. And when people are ready, then they connect with you and reach out.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the name of the game, isn't it? In sales, it's how to build trust, and it's the hardest thing to do from cold. And I think that's where, I'm a big believer that there'll be no replacement ever for looking in the whites of someone's eyes and mainly a face-to-face meeting, although you can clearly do that on video here. It's not, for me, the same doing a virtual meeting to actually having a personal meeting with someone sat in the office with them. And I think that at least video is that sort of step closer to gaining trust over online. And that's why I think those videos are quite powerful to do. And it just shows your personality, which you're not always going to get across from an advert or sometimes an email. It's a much more sort of personal way of doing it, I think.
Cool, man. Well, as you are a champion appointment setter, for anyone that's tuning in, that's listening, that's watching live, have you got any tips on how to book more appointments over the phone? So for anyone that's thinking right now, I do quite a lot of cold calling. I'm not getting the conversion rates that I'd like to see from call to booked appointment. Are there any quick tips you can share with us, please, Christian?
Yeah, I've got a few. The main one that I would say, and I've seen this happen for the last 12 years, is you have to have an angle before you can pick up the phone. And what I mean by an angle is a lot of companies will have a pitch. They'll have a set of data to call, and they'll be just hitting the phone and getting through their numbers and going, I hope one of these people picks up, and then I hope this pitch resonates with them. But for me, the catalyst to kind of bringing it all together is having that angle. And this kind of comes back to what I mentioned a bit earlier on in the podcast, which was doing a little bit of research. Now, I think research is a fine, it's a balancing game, really, because you can over research and then you're not hitting the right number of calls a day. But having an angle, if I'm about to call a healthcare organization for, printers, for example, well, it's kind of quite obvious that they're going to be in high demand right now, and their print volume is going to be quite high. So their costs are going to be quite high. So there's no point in me just calling up and talking to them about a new product and not relating it to potential cost savings, and being empathetic in the fact that they're probably inundated with calls right now for service in IT and things like that. So it's about having a bit of an angle before you call. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, which I'm sure most of your listeners already, or your viewers already know, is having that positive attitude. You know, it's
Sure.
going into it knowing that no call is personal to you, as they're not, you know, no objection, sorry, is personal to you. That person might just be having their own problems that day, and just not let one call affect the rest of your, say, 80 calls that day. You know, just carry on. And, you know, understand that the person on the other end of the phone is selling you a reason not to meet, and you're trying to sell them a reason to meet. So you're ultimately both in sales. It's just going to come down to who's the better salesman.
Reminds me of The Wolf of Wall Street, where it says every call you get sold, if you sell them why they'll buy it, or they sell you an excuse why they don't.
There you go. It's probably where I've heard it.
No,
That's the only part I copy, by the way. Nothing else.
Fair play. Enjoyable film. Cool, man. Well, we've covered some good ground. We've learnt your story. We've learnt kind of how you've grown your business and some of the channels. So we've talked some good stuff, really, in terms of kind of generating referrals, using video, kind of positivity on the phone, and taking the right angle and understanding the business that you're calling. So essentially warming up the call, really. So you're not just going in blind, and you kind of taking the right attitude and understanding where they're at, rather than just guessing and hoping for the best, making better sense of your time. Okay, man. Well, in terms of your company, are there any particular highs or any particular lows? Sometimes I like to ask if there's any low points and how you overcome those, or any particular high points you'd like to share with us.
Oof. We'll start with the lows. They're always easier to remember. No, I don't know if I'd call them lows, but I'd certainly call them awkward times in business. And I think one of the biggest benefits of being a business owner that I realized early on is you finally get to choose the people you work with. Whereas if you're an employee for a company, a lot of the time you're kind of forced to work with certain people. And, you know, there's been a couple of occasions, and luckily only 2 occasions in the last 3 and a bit years we've been running, where we've actually just had to sort of close the door on certain clients, because it's not about the fact that we couldn't perform for them. It was the fact that every time my phone would ring, I would get anxiety, and it was a feeling that I thought, I never want to have this again.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah. So it was a low, because it was, you know, in one occasion, it was a huge deal. So it was kind of like nice to have that money come in as a new business. And obviously, as I say, the clients buy upfront from us, so we have to refund that money. So it's horrible seeing it leave the account. But that was a big lesson learned, I think, is not just to take on any business just because it looks like a nice big chunky deal to have in your account, and make sure you actually deal with people you actually enjoy working with. And I think the highs have been just meeting and growing our agents. You know, we've got nearly 50 people now in our agents pool, where, you know, who generate meetings from us. And because we've got the sales hub here in Marbella, we've had people fly out to Spain. We've had clients fly out to Spain. We go out, we go to the beach together. We feel like we're working with friends. And for me, it kind of feels like, actually, I haven't built a company. I've built a big bunch of new friends that I get to work with, that help them make more money, and at the same time help me build a life as well. So that's been my high. It's doing something in a very different way to the norm, really.
Good stuff, man. I like the first point you mentioned about being able to fire clients, because, like you say, not every deal is a good deal, and sometimes when it's been a slow month, a slow week, slow quarter, whatever, and the opportunity of cash is on the table, you're thinking, we do need some business flowing in. But at the same time, if you can usually sense, not always, but quite often when you speak to people, you can sense if they're going to be demanding a lot of your time, if they're asking for things that are really difficult to carry out, if they want things done yesterday, they want everything done super fast. So you can kind of get a grasp if they're going to be using up a lot of your own or your team's time and energy. And like you say, knowing when to turn down work, not always easy, but it's something that you learn the hard way. And I certainly learned the hard way over the years.
We call it avoiding the supplier-slave relationship. That's pretty much how we internally call it. And yeah, you're right. You can pick up on it straight away. normally after they sign their contract.
Nice, dude. Have you got any habits that you can share with us in terms of kind of daily routines or anything like that you think have been a great angle in terms of your success in your business?
In terms of personal habits or sales?
Could be either. Could be personal, could be business, could be fitness, could be anything that you think has got your success.
I mean, it sounds a bit weird, but I would say eating is such a big part of it, which is great because most of us love eating. Eating healthy, you know, you are what you eat. If you're good on the inside, you'll be good on the outside, sort of thing. And you know, I spent years doing meal deals in the UK. I spent years having a sandwich, a bag of crisps, and Iron Brew, which is my favourite sort of soft drink. And I can't believe how different I feel from just eating fresh food. So my energy levels are much better. I work better. I sleep better. So eating the right sort of food, and then absolutely, you know, you mentioned it already, exercise. For me, the gym is where I disconnect from the world. It's where I get my hour and a half of sort of freedom from everything. The phone goes off. Otherwise, my trainer would kill me if I was looking at my phone during the sessions. And it's just where I can just unleash hell, you know, physically. and I think we need to do that, especially in a lead generation role where you're making maybe 80 to 100 calls a day. People think it's draining on your mind, but it's physically draining as well. Agree.
I completely think that sales, business, whatever you're in, you need some kind of relax or something that you can do. It doesn't matter if it's going to the gym, if it's running, or something that takes your mind off, where you can put your phone down for 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, however long it is, and just refresh, really. Whether it's taking your dog for a walk, going for a run, whatever you'd like to do. I think it's quite important, and you can revitalize and come back ready to rock and roll. Cool, man. Is there one thing, Christian, one thing that businesses can be doing on digital marketing from today that's going to help their business?
You had to say digital marketing.
Put you on the spot there, haven't I?
Yeah. Work with you. No, absolutely. I think the thing that they need to do is be conscious that there's not, you know, a lot of people think of digital marketing and they just think one thing. They think SEO, they think LinkedIn, they think, you know, and in my experience, in the same way as lead generation, you know, more broadly, you have to get the combination of things right. It's having that sequence of the journey the client's going to be on. So I think not just putting all your eggs in one basket and focusing on one thing, like just only your website or only your LinkedIn. A lot of people look at their budget and say, right, let's put everything there. I think you need to spread your bets a bit and actually, most importantly, analyze what's at the end of it, which is where most companies fail. They spend the money, they say we didn't get the results we hoped, you know, through digital marketing sometimes, and they then just say, right, well, that's something we're never going to do again. Whereas there's probably a very good lesson learned there that they forget to look at.
Like it. Some great points, man. Awesome stuff. So as we are recording live, if anyone watching on LinkedIn wants to ask a question to myself or Christian, we'll do a couple of those Q&A at the end. But as for everyone else, you've been tuning into Sam's Business Growth Show via LinkedIn Live, where we sit down with business leaders, experts, and entrepreneurs from around the globe. We find out their story, how digital marketing's helped them along the way, and their exclusive tips and insights to help you skyrocket your business. Christian, we'd like to ask everyone that comes on, if you could thank just one person, either dead or alive, having a positive influence on yourself and your career, who would that be and why?
Oof. It sounds a bit cheesy, but it has to be 100% my father. You know, there's no two ways about it. You know, I was a very spoiled child growing up, and I was very annoyed when I turned into sort of 18, 21. And I thought, why am I being so hard done by when all my friends that grew up with me in Marbella are driving Ferraris now and I'm not? And you know, I'm just so happy that he kind of made me go down the hard route, because now I feel like whatever happens in life, I always have the skill set to be able to pick myself back up, and I'm not reliant on sort of that family fund, which doesn't really
definitely. No, I completely agree. It's so much more rewarding as well, isn't it, when you've worked for it from scratch and kind of built your way up.
Yeah.
Cool, dude. Awesome. So, Christian, give us a quick snapshot of your business, and let everyone that's tuning in or listening know the best way to get in touch with yourself. Let's hear it.
Okay, so pipeline upgrades. We are a company that's changing the world of lead generation as we know it. We are generating a risk-free, ultimately, appointment setting services for you. And the way that we can get in touch is by emailing me at christian.burton@pipelineupgrade.com, or you can visit pipelineupgrade.com, or just add me on LinkedIn, Christian Burton. And we will offer you a commercially risk-free way to grow your business. We will get you in front of customers, which at the end of the day is what most marketing efforts, whether you go to a trade show, whether you're doing email marketing, you're doing SEO, what good looks like out of all those sort of streams is ultimately getting you to propose your solution to a decision maker. We'll cut out all the if, buts, and maybes and just give you that cost per meeting to work with.
Awesome, dude. Christian, thanks very much for coming on, man.
No worries. Thank you, Sam.
Are you tired of constantly hunting for new customers? You could be missing out on regular inbound opportunities, all because your website isn't on the first page of Google. Perhaps you're already spending lots of money on advertising, but your website is failing to convert all of your hard-earned visitors into a consistent flow of new customers. If you'd like to learn more about our unusual approach that brings ideal clients straight to you, connect with Sam Dunning on LinkedIn or book a free 20-minute consultation via webchoiceuk.com. That's webchoiceuk.com. Subscribe today for more digital marketing, sales, and business growth tips from the experts.